Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I want to reiterate what Doug just said about Alan K. Rode. He's a really good friend of mine, and you won't find anybody who knows more about film noir than Alan K. Rode. Well, maybe Eddie Muller. But Alan is a really great guy, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say to you guys. As for this film, if I were to have a conversation with any of you and I were to ask you, name one of the best Westerns ever made, you'd probably say High Noon, The Searchers, or the best war film, Sergeant York, a musical, Singing in the Rain, obviously. If you asked anybody what was the greatest film noir, somebody is going to say Double Indemnity. This is a film released in 1944. It has a very, very heavy film noir, hard-boiled detective fiction pedigree. In the novella that it's based upon, it was written by James N. Cain, who wrote stories like Mildred Pierce and The Postman Always Rings Twice. The screenplay was co-written by Raymond Chandler, who was the novelist of The Big Sleep, The Lady in the Lake, and several other Philip Marlowe stories, many of which were turned into films themselves. And that hard-boiled pedigree that was brought to this new style of filmmaking that came of age during World War II was accentuated by the co-writer and the director of this film, Billy Wilder. This was Billy Wilder's first foray into what we now know as film noir. While he didn't have the hard-boiled literary background that Cain and Chandler did, Billy Wilder certainly had a very dark view of the world that he came by quite naturally as a German refugee who had to flee in the 1930s Hitler's harrowing message of Jews, Billy Wilder was Jewish, and other undesirables as a threat from within, impure vermin tainting the blood and soil of Nazi Germany. Now, I thought this was a cynical melodrama about illicit sex and murder, Scott. Well, yes it is, and that's why it's film noir. This is a film that shows the seedy, dark underbelly of not only Los Angeles, but also of domesticity, American domesticity. And you have, in the guise of this woman, Phyllis Dietrichson, who is conniving a way of killing her husband. And this is the kind of thing that film noir excelled at. Now, the reason why film noir came of age and why Double Indemnity was such a hallmark film of 1944 is because it was a pretty dark mood in the country. We were still in the midst of World War II, and frankly, Americans had just seen too much to go back to quaint little stories of domestic bliss, of slight little conflicts that have to be resolved by the third act. This was a very different kind of story, and it was the kind of story that only Billy Wilder and other practitioners of the film noir genre could make. As for Billy Wilder and Chandler themselves, their working relationship in bringing this screenplay to light was a contentious one. Chandler, a recovering alcoholic, was not a fan of Billy Wilder's drinking while working in their cramped little room at Paramount. He thought Billy Wilder was very rude, and he also was displeased that Billy Wilder did not say please when he asked Raymond Chandler to close the Venetian blinds one day. Still, Raymond Chandler did admit that Billy Wilder was responsible for pretty much everything that Chandler had learned about movie making. So it was a prolific and very productive partnership between the two. As for the casting, Phyllis Dietrichson is played by the marvelous Barbara Stanwyck, who in my mind is probably the greatest screen actress of the classic Hollywood era. She was, at this point in her career, she had played heavies, but she had never played an outright killer. And so she was very nervous about taking on this role. But Billy Wilder asked her, "Are you an actress or are you a mouse?" And Stanwyck said, "Well, I'm an actress." And Billy said, well, then do the picture. And she did. And she earned an Academy Award nomination for her troubles. And Stanwyck was Wilder's first choice. And probably the first and only choice. But in terms of casting Walter Neff, the other half of this murderous duo in Double Indemnity, it was never a sure thing. They had first offered it to George Raft. And when Billy Wilder had talked through what Walter Neff's character was like, George Raft kept asking, where's the lapel story? Where's the lapel? And Billy Wilder just continued to tell him the synopsis of the story, but again, at the end of the pitch, George Raft says, where's the lapel? Billy Wilder didn't know what the hell he was talking about. Well, it turns out that George Raft assumed that Walter Neff was going to turn out to be some sort of undercover cop. And at the end, in the third act, he would turn over his lapel to reveal a badge of some sort. And Billy Wilder says, well, then this is not the role for you. So George Raft turned it down, which is in part for George Raft's career, because he was used to turning down roles that later went to other actors, like Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon. George Raft turned that down. He also turned down Rick Blaine in Casablanca. And it occurred to me that George Raft really shouldn't have been asking, where's the lapel, and instead, where's my new agent? Now, he did, Walter Neff was eventually cast was filled with Fred McMurray. And Fred McMurray also had some qualms about playing this role, because as he said to Billy Wilder, look, I'm just a saxophone player. You know, I'm mostly known for playing comedies with Carole Lombard. But Billy Wilder saw something in Fred McMurray of using this good guy to play against type. And Fred McMurray, this is probably his greatest performance. Probably the second one would be The Caine Mutiny, released just a few years later. And, in McMurray, he didn't continue his career playing baddies. I mean, he eventually became known as a Disney dad and the absent-minded professor, and on television in My Three Sons. And then the third performance I want to call out is that of Edward G. Robinson as the insurance adjuster, as Walter Neff's co-worker in this film. And Robinson plays a sort of the detective type who slowly but surely kind of figures out what really happened in the drama. And it's the performance of Robinson that really grounds this picture and really brings a humanity to it. And it's so remarkable that Edward G. Robinson, in his long and lengthy career, was never even nominated for an Academy Award. It's really, really crazy. So in closing, I'd just like to say that this is a film that when you leave the theater, you're gonna just be struck by not only the performances and the direction and the writing, but particularly by the cinematography by John Seitz and the music by Miklos Rosa. And this is a film I haven't seen it in the theater in a very long time, so I'm very excited to share this with you. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Double Indemnity.